The film begins with Jensen Ames, a former inmate and blue-collar worker, facing a harsh reality. His steel mill is shutting down, leaving its employees without their final paychecks. This leads to a protest outside the factory, which turns violent when riot police arrive. Seeing his co-workers beaten, Jensen fights back, taking down several officers before escaping. He gets home to find his wife and their baby, unaware that a masked killer has already broken in and murdered his wife in the kitchen. As Jensen returns downstairs, the intruder ambushes him, knocking him out. The killer plants the murder weapon in Jensen's hand, ensuring he'll be framed. Jensen wakes up to sirens and flashing lights as police burst in and arrest him for a crime he didn't commit. 6 months later, Jensen is transferred to Terminal Island Prison. Guard Ulrich gives him a frigid welcome, dousing him with water before an officer beats him. He's then placed in a cell with 3 violent inmates. A few hours later, Ulrich returns expecting to find Jensen defeated, but instead discovers all 3 cellmates knocked out cold. The next morning in the mess hall, Jensen immediately draws attention. Prisoners like Coach, Gunner, and Lists watch him closely, recognizing him as a once legendary driver whose career ended in tragedy. The tense atmosphere shifts when Pachinko and a friend approach, spitting in Jensen's food and taunting him as a wife killer and child abuser. Enraged, Jensen attacks Pachinko, but guards intervene and drag him away. Jensen is taken to Warden Claire Hennessy's office. She knows everything about his past, his abilities, his reputation, and most importantly, his talent behind the wheel. She offers him the role of Frankenstein, the famous driver in the death race. The real Frankenstein died in his last race, but the public is unaware. As Frankenstein is a fan favorite, Hennessy wants to keep his death a secret to maintain the show's ratings. She offers Jensen a tempting deal: win one more race and earn his freedom. Since Frankenstein had already won 4, Jensen only needs 1 victory. Jensen hesitates, as a race where drivers die is a difficult choice. Hennessy, however, won't take no for an answer, threatening him with solitary confinement to ensure he can't expose her secret. With no other option, Jensen agrees. He's taken to the prison's auto shop to meet Coach and his mechanics, the team behind Frankenstein's car. They explain the rules: every driver is on their own with no alliances. Jensen also notices a restricted workshop where Hennessy is secretly building something. Coach introduces him to his car, a heavily modified Mustang V8 fastback loaded with weapons and armor. To prevent escapes, ammunition is only loaded on race day. Coach makes it clear that escaping the island is impossible. The only way out is a narrow bridge guarded by helicopters and patrol cars. Later, in the prison yard, Coach explains the race's 3-stage structure. The first 2 stages are for elimination, while the final stage is a high-speed dash to the finish line. Each driver is given a navigator, usually a woman from the women's facility. The only exception is Joe, who goes through navigators so quickly it makes the audience uncomfortable. List then briefs Jensen on the main competitors: 14K, a ruthless triad member who is also an MIT graduate; Hector Grimm, a psychopath who idolizes Hennessy; Slovo Pachenko, an Aryan Brotherhood leader known for his brutality; and Travis Colt, a disgraced former NASCAR driver desperate to prove himself. Their conversation is interrupted when Joe and his crew confront Jensen, making it clear the race is between Joe and Frankenstein. A prison transport van then arrives, and Jensen notices something strange: the inmates are wearing GPS tracking bracelets. A disturbing realization hits him: the man who killed his wife was wearing the same bracelet. With no time to process this, the first stage of the race begins. Jensen is fully transformed into Frankenstein, wearing the legend's signature clothes, mask, and ring. His return instantly recaptures the audience's attention. Coach warns him to stay silent to preserve the mystique. Once inside the car, however, he can remove the mask as the windows are mirrored. Case, his navigator, already knows the truth. As they prepare, Jensen asks Case about her past. She reveals she killed a cop, her own abusive husband, because she had no other choice. Before they can say more, the countdown begins. The first lap is gentle. Weapons won't activate until the second, but drivers still try to shove each other off the track. With Case's guidance, Jensen keeps up with Joe at the front, and when she spots a shortcut, she directs him through it, allowing him to take the lead. The second lap begins with Hennessy activating shields and weapons, forcing drivers to hit 4 special manholes to enable their combat systems. Chaos erupts as the race turns into a full-scale battle. Hennessy further raises the stakes by activating death heads, deadly traps placed strategically across the track. Grimm is the first to use them, slamming another driver into a trap, killing him instantly. He then slows Joe with an oil slick, but his moment of triumph is cut short when 14K launches a missile that forces his car off the track. As Grimm stumbles out, Joe runs him over without hesitation. Jensen manages to activate his weapons, but his machine gun jams. His navigator, Case, doesn't hesitate, climbing onto the hood mid-race to fix it. Gunfire rains down, but Jensen's driving keeps her safe. She quickly returns to her seat and they press on. The battle intensifies. Jensen steals a defense manhole from Colt, but just like with the real Frankenstein, none of his defense systems activate, and his rear shield takes heavy fire. Thinking fast, Jensen comes up with a risky plan. He tells Case to unhook the napalm canister and sit on his lap. With perfect timing, he ejects her seat, sending the canister flying toward Colt's car. Case then follows up by tossing the car's lighter, igniting the napalm and engulfing Colt's vehicle in flames. With Colt out, Jensen faces Joe. Suddenly, Pachenko drives ahead and makes a familiar hand gesture, the same one the man who killed his wife made. Jensen freezes. The shock pulls him out of focus, and Joe seizes the moment, slamming into Jensen's car and knocking him into last place while Pachenko takes the lead. By the end of the race, 3 drivers are dead and 6 remain. Back at the garage, Coach and his team inspect the car but find nothing wrong. The system should have worked. Frustrated and suspicious, Jensen connects the dots and confronts Hennessy, accusing her of orchestrating everything. His wife's murder, rigging the race, and using Pachenko to manipulate him into taking Frankenstein's place. Hennessy doesn't admit anything. Instead, she shows him a photo of his daughter in foster care, revealing that if he wants to see her again, he has no choice but to play along. Trapped, Jensen returns to the yard and talks with Coach, who explains he's not an inmate. His sentence ended 3 years ago, but he chose to stay because the races and routines gave his life purpose. He also reveals he never believed Jensen killed his wife. Later that evening, Jensen spots Pachenko and follows him to his team's pit. He is immediately ambushed. Pachenko lands several heavy blows before grabbing a metal tool, intending to crush Jensen's skull. Before he can strike, List intervenes, stabbing Pachenko in the back with a pen. Jensen seizes the moment, grabbing a metal rod and driving it into one of Pachenko's men before knocking out the others. He then turns on Pachenko. Cornered, Pachenko confesses that Hennessy ordered the hit and that Ulrich brought him to the house. Before Jensen can finish him off, Ulrich and another guard storm in and drag him away. The next day, just before the second stage, Pachenko mocks Jensen with the same taunting hand gesture. This time, Jensen doesn't react. As soon as the race starts, he deliberately slows down and veers into a tunnel to confront Case. He accuses her of killing the real Frankenstein, stating that the car's failures in 2 consecutive races couldn't be a coincidence. Case hesitates, and Jensen warns her that if she doesn't tell the truth, he will eject her. With no other choice, Case confesses. She sabotaged Frankenstein's rear weapons under Hennessy's orders, promised freedom in return. The goal was to make him lose, not die, but his desperation to win without working weapons turned it into a fatal accident. With the proof he needs, Jensen shifts gears and races back onto the track, ignoring Joe and focusing entirely on Pachenko. They repeatedly clash, trying to force each other off the road. Jensen then makes an unusual move, activating the weapon's manhole instead of the defense system. Everyone is confused as his guns are in the front. To their shock, Jensen spins the car around and drives backward. With a clear line of fire, he unleashes a barrage of bullets on Pachenko's vehicle. The damage quickly mounts. With the car barely holding together, Jensen releases a smoke screen, blinding Pachenko, who crashes straight into a concrete barrier. Jensen stops his car, steps out, and in one swift motion, breaks Pachenko's neck, avenging his wife. Meanwhile, Joe swaps his navigator mid-race, preparing for the final showdown. Just as the race intensifies, Hennessy unveils her secret weapon, the Dreadnought, a massive, heavily armed tanker truck. The monstrous vehicle storms onto the track, crushing everything in its path and obliterating 2 minor racers. Unlike the other cars, it has no track restrictions and can even cut through buildings. The destruction continues as 14K's navigator becomes its next target. The Dreadnought brutally tortures 14K, trapping his car with chains and firing on it until it bursts into flames. With only Jensen and Joe left, winning appears impossible without a shared strategy. Recognizing this, Jensen contacts Lists and links his communicator to Joe's car. Both racers agree to team up against the Dreadnought. Flanking the massive truck, they skillfully dodge its attacks and perfectly time their movements, each hitting a trap manhole with 2 wheels. The Dreadnought slams into the trap, flipping violently and coming to a halt. With the Dreadnought destroyed, the second stage ends. Only Jensen and Joe remain for the final race. Later that evening, Joe approaches Jensen in the pit, noting that his voice is eerily similar to Frank's. Meanwhile, Hennessy and Ulrich decide that Jensen must not survive the final race. The next day, just before the final stage begins, Ulrich discreetly plants a bomb under Jensen's car while Hennessy distracts everyone with a speech. She mentions this could be the first time someone wins their freedom with a 5th victory, but Jensen realizes something chilling. No one has ever been allowed to win 5 races. The races were always rigged to ensure no driver ever escaped. Coach overhears this and shows Jensen a key detail from a video of Grimm's death, sparking an idea. Jensen immediately asks List to install a half-gallon reserve tank in his car, then heads to Joe's pit to propose a final collaboration. As Jensen changes into his Frankenstein gear, Hennessy visits him with his release papers and a new proposition. She wants him to stay in prison and keep the legend alive, arguing that an ex-con can't give his daughter a good life. Jensen takes the papers without a word. Case then reveals that Hennessy ordered her to stop him if he was about to win, but Jensen has other plans. The race begins. Ulrich manipulates the manholes, activating them only for Joe, then opens fire, severely damaging Jensen's rear shield. But Joe is prepared. Having studied Frankenstein's past races, he knows how to evade the attacks. Hennessy, eager to keep viewers engaged, activates a defense manhole for Jensen, but Joe fires a rocket at it, destroying it instantly. He launches more rockets, which Jensen skillfully dodges, letting them hit a weak spot in a wall, the same one damaged during Grimm's crash. The barrier crumbles, creating a massive hole. Instead of racing for victory, Jensen and Joe execute their real plan, escaping prison. This is their final act of defiance against Hennessy's rigged system. Enraged, Hennessy shuts down the live broadcast and orders every officer to hunt them down. She presses the detonator, expecting Jensen's car to explode, but nothing happens. Coach and his crew had already removed and deactivated the bomb. Jensen and Joe speed toward the bridge with police close behind. Jensen releases the extra reserve tank, letting it fall onto the pursuing cars. The impact triggers a massive explosion, creating a fiery barrier that blocks the path. With no obstacles left, they break through the bridge gates and split up onto separate roads to confuse the helicopters. The plan works and the choppers focus on Jensen. Back at the prison, Case, with her release papers in hand, decides to help Jensen for Frank's sake. Ahead, Jensen spots a series of construction cranes and leaps out of the car, disappearing. Case, now in the driver's seat, continues on. Moments later, the helicopters cut off her path, forcing her to stop. She steps out, hands raised in surrender, wearing Frank's clothes and mask. Now she is Frankenstein. The authorities believe they've captured the real Frankenstein, allowing Jensen to escape. Case is arrested and taken back to prison, completing the deception. Meanwhile, Jensen reunites with Joe and they board a train, disappearing into the distance. Back at Terminal Island, Ulrich watches the ratings skyrocket. He casually opens a package celebrating the race, unaware it contains the bomb he planted under Jensen's car. It detonates, killing both him and Hennessy. 6 months later, Jensen and Joe have built a new life in Santa Rosalia, Mexico, running a small auto shop. Jensen has regained custody of his daughter, giving her the life he always wanted. Everything has fallen into place. Soon Case arrives, now officially free. She smiles as she steps into the shop, bringing a new racing car for them to check out. If you enjoyed the recap, please leave a like and subscribe, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.